Hey guys, it's Yvette, and I am going to be starting this mini series sew along that Giucy Giuce and Alison Glass, or Alison Glass and Giucy Giuce, are going to be doing for the next 10 weeks. And what this is going to entail is 8 foundation paper piecing patterns. Trying to say all my words right, that we are going to sew over 8 weeks, and then you're going to have the next 2 weeks to decide how you want to finish those blocks. You can finish them in any way you want. All of the details for the sew along are at alisonglass.com. She has all the information. You definitely want to make sure that you are registered to be a part of the sew along, because it's free. Number one, you don't have to pay to just be a participant. And what it'll get you is all of the newsletters that they're going to have every week that's going to announce what's going on, who has discounts, because they have lots of people who are sponsoring them and have, you know, percentage off coupons for the people who are participating in the sew along. I have a cat who's about to jump up here. Are you coming, Spooky Scout? You got to hurry up, buddy. So the very first one that we are going to do is the log cabin. And this one is, like, every single one of them has a different size that you can choose. In other words, here is the pattern, and you are going to be able to decide how big you want it to be. And I am sitting here with Spooky Scout. Come see, baby. Sorry about that. So what we're going to do is, you know, this one here on the front of the pattern is finishing at 4 inches. Okay. And so with this one, if you count the lines down, there are 10 different colors in here. I've decided for the sew along that I'm going to do here on YouTube that I'm going to use this fabric for my background, which is what I'm considering this part here. And I'm going to use the Alison Glass Sunprint 2019 for the colored parts. And so I was sitting here trying to figure out, like, how many do I want? Because there are 21 fabrics here. And I'm not sure if I want to just, like, I haven't, this is where I've started, same place that you guys are starting, trying to figure out which fabrics I want to use. Now, the fabrics that I really like the best, are probably the ones with, like, the little flowers on them. But the thing I'm thinking about is if I use the ones with the little flowers on them, with the pieces being so small, that there would be a lot of times when you wouldn't even see the little flowers. And then I thought, well, maybe I could use the ones with the words, because everybody knows I love all the fabrics with the words. But then I'm like, well, what if they go crooked? Like, I don't really care if they go crooked, but what if I've got people watching that really makes them kind of crazy? So let me count and see how many of these I have. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've only got 7 that have the patterns on it. Okay, so what if I would love to know how you guys do your fabric choosing, because this, to me, can be the hardest part of the whole thing, is just trying to figure out what fabrics you want to use. Okay, so let's see. What if I do, Okay, let me scooch this over for a second. And I think I'm going to, first I'm going to pull these out. All right, let's just pull these out. Okay. Gosh, that's gorgeous. Isn't that gorgeous? Okay, so once I have these pulled out, I can sort of see that I'm missing from this kind of a color group over here. And so maybe I think that these would stand out too much because there's so much of just solid fabric that maybe what I'll do is I'll take some with the words. That one looks good there. Okay, I'm really liking this one, I think, and I would put that here. And so I think I'm just going to go for the 10 because that'll be the 4-inch. And then I can always build out. If I want to make the block larger, I can always use more background to build out around. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I need one more. And let me see, I have a word here and a word here. So I probably should put a word here, because then I've got 3 prints between the words, and then I have this little guy extra. All right, guys, this is what I'm going to use. So let me pull these up. Just stack them. I love fabric. Oh my goodness, just touching all of this makes me just so happy. Look at the gorgeous goodness that we're not using. Okay. All right, so here we are with the fabrics that I'm going to use. So they do have a little piece in the middle that they put a white, but I think what I'm going to do, I think I'm just going to put my background in the middle. I kind of like that. I don't know why, like the white stands out so much, but I mean, it's a personal decision. You know, we all decide what is aesthetically pleasing to us, and there's no rules. You can make it whatever you want. So I think I'm going to put my my background in the middle, and then I'm going to follow around. And so here's what I do. Now this is a copy. Just wanted to tell you guys, seriously, you're going to get the pattern. Please make copies. You're going to want to make this again, and you don't want to not have your pattern. Okay, so make copies. For this week, I am just using regular copy paper. I have also purchased some freezer paper sheets, and I have some actual foundation paper that I'm going to use just because I've never used them before, and I thought I would be able to tell you guys what I think about them. And I also got some, I think I ordered some newsprint. I'm not sure. I'm actually, I'll be honest with you, a little bit nervous about newsprint. But I'm going to try a few things. Now this is what I do. Okay, I'm going to be going only to here. So I'm just going to, I want to have my, my paper go out a little bit past that, but I don't want too much extra. So I just trim it off. That way I don't have a whole bunch of extra paper that I don't need, because it's just more for you to carry around. So again, I am just doing the 4-inch for this particular one. I'm going to decide probably each week what size I want to make, because I may decide to have like a bunch of different sizes and then just use background to either make them all the same size, or I don't know, I'll play with it. I'll figure it out. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is we need to have a piece of our fabric here that is only going to cover up that little square in the middle. Now, here's what I do when I am foundation paper piecing. When you are working with it, a lot of people say, oh, you know, it's working backwards, you have to think backwards. You really, like in the middle of making the foundation paper pieced item, whatever it is, you don't really need to think backwards during that time. What you're going to be doing, and it's going to come into play more with pieces that you are making that are larger and then need to be put together, which is not the case with these guys. We are just doing one paper piecing quote unquote, at a time. So we're going to be making on this one paper. We're not going to make this and then make another piece and hook them together, and it's got to be precise and all the corners. This is a very simple, and you should be able to learn all the steps that you need from doing something like this. The only thing about this is that it's little, and that does make some people nervous. I know for me, I'm a little like, she's like this much nervous. But nervous is a crazy word. It's not really nervous. It's more like, you know, you're kind of going, wow, that's like really small. But to me, the best time to do something small is when you're paper piecing, because it does all the work for you, and you'll see exactly what I mean. But here's how you should think. This part here, where all of the lines are that you're going to be sewing down on, all of those lines are basically the back of your quilt, okay? So if you were making a block, when you finish sewing, when you flip over and you look on the back of your block, this is the back of the block, okay? So nobody is going to see any of these lines. Imagine that this would stay there. It wouldn't matter, because nobody would see any of this, because this is the back. So it is sort of working backwards in that way. So on the flip side, this side is your pretty side. This is your quilt. This is the part everybody's going to see. So you just have to think in terms of, when I'm done adding a piece, this side needs to look good. It doesn't matter what this side looks like. This side needs to look good. So that means that all of your finished pieces need to be facing up. The good side of your fabric needs to be facing this way, which means when you are adding pieces to your foundation paper piecing, you want this fabric, while you're holding it, you want the good side to be facing you, because when you're going to flip it over, now you're going to flip this way to sew to iron your seam, and that's the pretty side they're going to see. So we're going to go through that, and I'm going to help you to keep remembering that as you sew. But here we go. We are going to get started. It's like, which way do I go? Which way do I go? Okay. Another thing that people talk about is, do I starch or do I not starch? And oh my goodness, you could have such a debate about that. I personally starch my fabric anytime before I'm going to sew with it. I have to say that this fabric is, and this is not a bad thing at all, but this fabric is not feeling really, really flimsy. And so that's a good thing, but it can stand, in my opinion, for a little bit of pressing. So I will do some best press on here. It's a very light starch. It's not heavy or anything like that. All it'll do is give your fabric some body so that it'll stand up more to you playing with it a lot. And so I do lightly starch my fabrics before I use them. Now, you know, as far as, oh, it's going to change the size, it doesn't matter, especially with this project, because we're not trying to, we're going to be sewing our own seams, doing our own thing. So it's just a different thing. So with foundation paper piecing, I do recommend that you lightly starch your fabrics. Don't go crazy, guys. I use one of these stylist sprayers, and these are amazeballs. You put your best press or even water, you could put anything you want in these, and what it does is it gives you a very, very light mist. Nothing will be, you know, like in one spot or anything like that. It gives you a very light mist, and so I definitely would recommend using one of these, just because it gives you a light hand right from the beginning. So I'm going to go and I'm going to lightly starch small pieces of fabric, because you're really not going to need a whole lot with this. And I will be right back for us to get started. And that's where we're going to start, that little bitty one right in the middle. Okay, I have lightly starched all my fabric and cut just pieces that I think I'll use throughout the series. And really, Jellybean? Come on, baby. Come on, keep going. Anyway, if you are using like large pieces like I had, mine were half yard cuts, you can leave them. You don't have to cut a piece. I'm just doing this for ease while I'm doing this sew along with you guys. So you can just cut pieces as you go. You really don't have to cut an entire piece off. I just wanted to clear that up. Okay, so I'm really excited. I'm ready to go. So our number one piece, here he is going to be background, or if you're going to put white or whatever it is you're going to put in the middle, that's fine. Okay, so if you had been foundation paper piecing for a long time, you could just cut like a little piece that, I mean, you want to like have some sort of allowance around the piece that you need. But the first piece is really not sewn down until you start adding the other pieces, okay? So for the number one piece, if you're first starting out, you really should cut bigger than you need. Now, a lot of people will tell you that you can take this piece and use a little bit of disappearing Elmer's glue, which I do have. And you can just get this kind here that's a washable school glue. It's a disappearing purple. It will go away, and so you can use this. I'll admit I have never done this before because personally I feel like you can just hold the fabric in place, put another piece on top and do your first stitch, and then it's down. But if you want to use this, if this makes you feel better, and it'll hold it in place, you know, in just until you have your first stitch down, and you should be fine, then go ahead and do that. You don't need to put a lot. Just dab a little bit on it, and then you'll put it on the back, because remember, this is your pretty side, okay? All right, so all I usually do, guys, is I take my fabric scissors. These are great. These are ginger scissors, and they are really sharp. So if you do buy some, and when you're not using them, please sheath them, because seriously, I almost cut through an entire finger over here and didn't even feel it. And that happened once, and then from then on, I'm like, that's it. I'm putting the covers on, because you don't know who's gonna, you know, get hold of them. But these are great fabric scissors. Okay, so I have all of my fabric here. I'm just going to, here's my background, which I'm going to use for that piece in the middle. And I have not cut my selvage off yet, so I'm going to kind of cut a big piece. And if this is your first time, I would just suggest cutting pieces that are definitely larger than you need, because you're going to need practice getting this done. I personally do not think there is anything to be nervous about for foundation paper piecing, but you do need to be in the moment. You need to be just paying attention to what you're doing. And I know that, you know, we should be doing that with all quilting. But when you're doing the foundation paper piecing, you really do need to just be present. Okay, but I'm going to cut mine a little bit bigger just to kind of show you what I'm talking about, how it's going to make it easier as you go. So I'm just going to cut a piece kind of big, because it's like almost the whole inside of the thing, but I'm going to cut a big old piece, and I'm just going to personally cut off the selvage. That way I don't have to think about, oh, there's a piece of selvage there. It doesn't have to be straight or anything at all. The one thing about foundation paper piecing is it is pretty darn forgiving. As long as you keep certain things the way they're supposed to be, it's gonna do all the work for you. It really will. Okay, so we have our number one, which is going to go right there, and all I will do, now let's say this, we're really very lucky if you're going to be using solids, then you're not going to have to worry about whether it is which side, right? Because they're both the right side. But if you're having prints such as this one, you will see how you really have to think whenever you are attaching your piece, okay? But with this one being a solid and the same front and back, it really doesn't matter. But let's say I was using, I'm just going to pull a piece of fabric. Let's say I was using this fabric. then what you would do is you would make sure that the pretty part, because the first part that you put down, number one that you put down, when you put it on your paper, it is already the way it's going to face, because you don't have to fold it over and press or anything like that. That is where it's going to go. So you want to make sure that it's pretty side up on the pretty side, right? Okay, so you would make sure it's there, and you would hold that in place, and then you would put your number 2 and go and sew, okay? But with a solid, you don't have to worry. So I'm going to just stick my number 1 on the back there. And when you look at your number 2, all you really need to do is have a piece that is that big, plus we're going to be using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, but if you were using a 1/4, then you would just need to make sure that your fabric was sticking out at least a 1/4 inch from either side. No matter what fabric size you were using, you need to go out a 1/4 inch. And for these, we need to make sure that we're going out at least an 1/8 of an inch. But like I said, I'm going to cut like a good size piece. All right. And I have already taken the selvage off of these pieces. So I'm going to cut a pretty good piece just so that we have something to work with. Like I said, it doesn't have to be all straight or anything, but you know, I mean, a nice square, just make you feel better. Okay, so you can use a light box, or you can use the sun. You can use just holding up the paper in front of a bright light, like say the light at this on your ceiling. I mean, as long as you can see it, you can use it. So what you are doing is I am putting on piece number 2. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make sure that piece number 2 is on top, which means it is, I can see it right here. It's facing me. That's how I want it to be. And so I am going to hold this fabric here, and I am going to have number 2 to the top. And I'm going to take my piece of fabric, and I am going to face it toward me. I want it to be pretty side toward me. And I'm going to stick it to the back. And when you hold it in place and then you hold it up to the light, you can totally see it in the back. Now, what you want to do with that piece of fabric is you want to make sure that you are holding it up. Now, it's obviously going to be very easy with these small pieces. But when you're doing like bigger pieces, like let's say you have a big piece like this, and I am going to have other tutorials with larger foundation paper piecing patterns, and so you can definitely in the future come back and watch how we do that. But you want to make sure that your fabric, this pink fabric, is one like this. Okay, when you are going to be sewing, you are going to sew the line between the 2 pieces that you have together. So 1 and 2, we're going to be sewing this line right here. You want to make sure that your fabric is at least, in this case, 1/8 of an inch higher than this line that you're going to sew, because that's going to be your seam allowance. So as long as you are 1/8 of an inch higher than the line you're going to sew, you're good. And you can have it go way big. You can, because all of that's going to be trimmed off. It's all going to be trimmed off. So I'm holding it up. I'm going to hold it up to my light over here. And my fabric is totally over the 2. Like I said, I've got like this giant piece of fabric. So I am going to take you over to the sewing machine with me. And I'm going to sew this line right here between the 1 and the 2. Okay guys, so we are at the sewing machine, and I'm going to set everything up. So I am basically just using a medium gray thread. And really, like with this type of sewing, it doesn't really matter what color your thread is, because you're going to have a very tight it's going to be a very tight stitch, okay? So you're not going to be able to really see it. It's going to be very tight. Now, if this is your first time foundation paper piecing, you should really only go you should only drop your stitch length down to like 1.8, because if you do make a mistake and you have to use a seam ripper, you don't want to have stitches as close as I'm going to do it. Now with this particular, the reason why I'm going to go such a short stitch length with this is because it's regular copy paper. So it's, you know, I mean, it's kind of on the thick side. I didn't use anything really thick. I just used regular old copy paper. But you want to make sure it's going to tear away pretty easily. So I always drop my stitch length down to 1.4. Sometimes I'll do 1.2. It really just depends. With these, I think we should be okay. So, okay, so here is my fabric on the back. This gray right here, I can't see what you guys are seeing. Oh, okay, I see it. So this gray here is same front and back, so no problem. But if we were using a print, we would want the gray to look like this. Okay, now the pink one, I want it to go like this, because when I go back to my cutting mat and ironing board, I am going to cut away some of this fabric and then I'm going to press back. So we want to see it. This is the pretty side, right? Okay, so what I do is I'm holding this on the back and I'm looking at the seam between number 1 and number 2, and I'm making sure that my pink fabric is at least 1/8 of an inch higher than the line I'm about to sew. Okay, and let's see, it's way more, so I have given myself plenty of room. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide this over, and guys, you will get used to this. I just know where my, just from doing it a lot, I know where my needle is going to drop down. If you want to, you could always hold your paper and then lower your needle until you see where it's going to go, and you'll start getting used to it. Once you do this, you'll start getting used to it. I know exactly where it's going to go, so now I'm going to pick it back up, and then I'll just lower my foot, drop the needle. My stitch length is down to 1.4, and you want to start right at the beginning of the line. It's very important with these because they're overlapping, right? It's not like you're going off the edge. These are going to be touching each other, so you want to make sure it's pretty accurate. And then you just sew until you get to the other side of the line, which right now these are very small, so you won't be stitching very much. You can go really slow if you want. Some people go a back stitch, some people don't. I'll go ahead and do it just to show you. But you really, in this type of situation, I don't think it's necessary because your stitches are so tight. But go ahead and do it if it makes you feel better. And I'm like so close to the edge, so I'm just going to lower my stitch length just a bit. Get down there, I'll do a back stitch. And if you go over like a little bit, really, it's okay, guys. Don't beat yourself up. You can really go over a little bit and it's not going to hurt a thing. Okay. And then I just remove all the extra stuff that's hanging out. And I always just, this little leg, I always trim that off. Especially if we're going to be doing this little bit of stitching. I think it's probably good to just, so I mean, we have like this tiniest little stitch. You see how it is there? And then we're going to be flipping this back, and then we'll have a pretty piece. Okay, and see, we just have that little bitty stitch there. Just right there between number 1 and number 2. So let's head over back to the cutting mat, and I'll show you the next step. Okay guys, so we are back with that little bitty piece that we just sewed down right there. And the first thing that we want to do when we come back to the cutting mat is we are going to trim off the excess. So you have this stitch line right here that's going to automatically want to fold right on there. So you don't have to worry about, oh, am I folding this in the right place? Blah, blah. it doesn't, you're going to be fine. So what you want to do, I'm right-handed. So I'm going to take my number 2 and I'm going to turn it to the right. And then right there where we stitch between 1 and 2, you're going to want to fold your paper over and just put it right on there. It doesn't even matter if it looks straight or whatever, because we're using such tiny pieces, it's probably gonna like get a little skewed sometimes. It's okay. This is just for your seam allowance. Okay. So you're going to want to leave 1/8 of an inch. This is the add 1/8, and I got the add 1/8 plus because I figured I might as well get the longest one I can so that I can always use it in the future, even if I have bigger blocks, right? So then what you want to do is there's a little lip right under here. And this piece, the bigger piece, is 1/8 of an inch. So you're going to take this lip and you're going to run it right up against where you just sewed, like such. And that is your 1/8. And so you know that that's proper, and you can go ahead and trim right there, right? And now you have trimmed your excess. You can also just use a ruler if you wanted to. You could have just run up these 1/8 of an inch lines right to the edge of your paper and trimmed off at 1/8 right there. Okay, so either way, you can use the ruler or you cannot use the ruler. It is totally up to you. But this did make it easier for sure. Okay, so then you'll take your piece and you're going to fold it back so that you're looking at the pretty side. Okay, you're going to take it, bring it over to your wherever it is that you iron. I'm bringing this over. This is a little it's one of those mats, but it's like the llama mat. It's not whatever the other one is. I'm terrible at remembering that stuff. But anyway, when you go in to do your pressing, you want to make sure that you are using an iron with no steam. You don't want to warp your paper in any way. So all you're going to do is you're going to take the piece that you just sewed down, and as we get bigger, as we expand out, this will get easier. But you're going to fold it over right on that little piece, and you're going to have to manipulate it just a little bit in this first one because you want it to be straight, and it's going to want to curve out on the ends. But once you have that held down, look how we got a little heart right there, guys. I didn't even try to do that. Just be a little patient with it. Just kind of work with it a little bit when it looks like you want it to look. And these ends on the sides here is not going to really matter because when you're trimming off excess later down the road, those are all going to get trimmed off anyway. You just want to make sure this part where you just stitched looks pretty. And then we're going to take our iron, you just press it down just to make sure that it's nice and pressed, right? Okay. And now we are ready to add our number 3. Okay guys, so we have just finished, and I'm having to edit this a little bit. So I just sewed on number 2, and we are going to now sew on number 3. Now, here's what I forgot to say before we started sewing, which you should probably do it before you start sewing, but you don't really have to. I mean, it's not like necessary. What I am going to do, oh, I don't want to use this one. I'm going to use a regular pin so that it doesn't have any transfer or anything like that. Here's the thing. Your number 1, let me just move this and then I can focus in on it. Okay, your number 1 is your background fabric, right? And we have to remember that as we are going around, that we are going to have, and I want to move it, let me move it to where it looks like there. Okay, so it's good. Okay, it's okay. Don't listen to me. Because I'm thinking that I'm looking at my pattern and then how theirs came out, but you have to remember that your finished piece is opposite of what you're looking at here. So no problem. My 2 and 3 are going to be my first color, which was the pink, which we just did. So I did number 2. Now I'm going to do the same one, number 3. I've cut this piece. And we know that everything going this way, like down here and to the right, is going to be a color. and then everything 4 and 5 and then up and to the left are going to be our background fabric. So all I'm going to do is just to sort of remind myself, I'm going to kind of like do anything you want. I'm going to put a B, right? Just so it kind of reminds me, B, background, 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 background. And I always do this with all of my foundation paper piecing. I'm just going to go this way. Because if you mark it beforehand, then when you get to your number, you don't have to keep thinking about the whole pattern all over. I usually do it right from the beginning. And the way I'll do it is, this one's going to be sort of easy because we're going to be able to do, we can cut 2 pieces. So I can do pink, 2 pieces of pink, 2 pieces of orange, 2 pieces of yellow. You know, I mean, I'm making it very simplistic, but I already know that if I just cut the 2 pieces, then I'll already be ahead of the game. And I'll do those like in a row, and then I'll have 2 backgrounds, 2 backgrounds, 2 backgrounds. And so anyway, that's a good thing to do before you start sewing. That way you have all of your notes directly on your sheet of paper, and you don't have to keep going back and search, you know, looking at the picture and seeing what are you doing next. And there's also sometimes, like this one, I don't really think it's very necessary, not really. But a lot of times whenever you get foundation paper piecing patterns, they will also give you a coloring sheet. And that's so that you can color it on the color sheet and then go back to your pattern, or at least this is how I take it. Go back to your pattern that you're going to be sewing directly on, and you can put some sort of little shortcut in each little piece that'll tell you which fabric you're going to want to cut for that piece. And then that way, right at the beginning, you're doing all your thinking, and then you can just sew after that. Okay? All right. So now that we've done that, okay, so now we're going to be putting on number 3. So I have this up here. And I have the light box. So I see the number 3 there. I am going to hold the pink fabric right side toward me. And I'm going to swoop it right underneath. And I'm going to put it okay, so I can see where it is. And it is well above that line, but let's see. Okay, so this is the line that we are going to sew. You want to make sure you're at least 1/8 of an inch above that, which I can see it poking out over here. So it's going all the way across there. So it's definitely well above that line. So I'm just going to grab this up and head over to the sewing machine. Okay, so I'm going to be sewing this line right underneath the number 3. So I'm going to slide my piece under, and I'm going to lower my needle manually to make sure it's going to land right where I want it to land, which is right at the top of the line. We're going just along the exact line. Okay, so we'll do 1 stitch. I just had to pull that out. 1 back stitch, and then we'll go straight down that line. And it's almost to the end. I'm going to make it a really tiny stitch. Okay. 1 back stitch. Okay, so we just sewed this line right under the 3. So I'm going to take the number 3. I'm going to turn it to the right because I'm right-handed. And this is the way I'm going to use my rotary cutter. I'm going to fold the paper back right where I sewed that line. We're going to use our add 1/8 ruler. And we're going to butt it right up against where we just sewed our seam allowance and trim. We'll take our alpaca mat. We're going to fold back the fabric. Just make that area pretty. All right. Alrighty. And now the next two pieces are going to be 4 and 5, which are both background. And I did trim a couple of pieces already, so I'm going to take one of them. And I'm going to want to put it in number 4. So thankfully, both sides are pretty, so you just put it underneath. And this is the way I always do it. I never really use the light box. I'm doing it with you guys just to kind of help you to see things. Hopefully it is helping you. So this is the line that we are going to sew, which is right under the number 4. And my fabric is way up here. So you just want to make sure it's at least 1/8 of an inch past the line that you're going to sew. And we are going to head over to the sewing machine right now. Okay, so we're going to sew this line right under the number 4. One back stitch. Okay, so we just stitched this line under number 4. So we take number 4, turn it to the right or to the left if you are left-handed. Fold it right over on the line you just stitched. And you're gonna butt that right up to the seam you sewed and trim. Okay, just flip this back and press. And now we're going to add the next background piece on number 5, which is right here. Okay, this is the line that we are going to sew on, and I can see the fabric right here and right here. So I know that I am definitely at least 1/8 of an inch past this line. So I'm going to head over to the sewing machine. Okay, I'm going to sew this line right under number 5, and I just wanted to let you guys know, you see me going from the sewing machine back over to the cutting mat, the ironing board, if I have my little alpaca mat, so I'm able to do that right there. And I'm moving around a lot. So you don't have to do that. I know of a lot of people who have found either they can make a setup over to the side where they can put a cutting mat, a little alpaca mat with a small iron. They have the whole thing set up. And they never really have to move from that area. They can just kind of do it very easily in that one spot. For me, I am obviously filming, so it's, I don't have that capability to do it, and it's just a lot easier, and you guys get to see things a lot more clearly the way I'm doing it. So now I'm going to sew this line right under number 5. Okay, I just sewed this line under number 5, so I'm going to turn number 5 to the right. And trim. Okay. Now, if we pull our fabric over, okay, so we just did the pink. We did 2 pieces of the pink. So we're going to pull that over. And now we're going to have our next 2 pieces, which are going to be number 6 and number 7, are going to be this color. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces. And the next piece is number 6, right here. So we're going to take our fabric. We're going to hold the pretty side to us, put it to the back, and okay. So this is the line I'm going to sew, and I can see the fabric right here. So I know I've got it definitely 1/8 of an inch past that line. So I'm just going to grab it up from the back and sew it down. Okay, I'm sewing right under number 6. Okay, I just sewed this line here right under number 6. I'm going to turn number 6 to the right. Okay, and now number 7 is going to be this piece. You want to hold that right side toward you, pretty side up, put it underneath. Okay, this is the line I'm going to sew, and it looks like it's like right here across, so I'm definitely 1/8 of an inch over. So let's go sew that down. And I'm sewing this line right under number 7. Okay, so I just stitched under number 7, so I'm going to take number 7 and twist it to the right. Trim the excess. I'm going to flip over the piece I just sewed on. Okay, so now our next pieces are going to be number 8 and number 9, which are both background pieces, and I did have a long piece that I had pulled off. Let me just cut the selvage off. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect in this instance because I'm just doing little pieces, but I'm going to do 8 and 9. Okay. So I'm going to take the fabric right side toward me, which in this case is either side. And then I'm going to put it back here at least 1/8 of an inch above the line that I'm going to sew. And I'm going to sew this line directly under number 8. My fabric is up here, so we're doing good. I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and sew that line right there. Okay, I'm sewing the line right under number 8. Backspace? Backstitch? Backspace. That's funny. Okay, I just stitched this line under number 8. I'm going to take number 8, turn it to the right, fold the paper right on that line I just stitched, and trim. I'm going to fold this back. Okay. And now on number 9, we are going to add this piece. So I'm going to hold it in the back. Make sure that it is at least 1/8 of an inch above the line that we are going to sew right here. And here is the fabric. And so I know that there's plenty of room right there. So I'm just going to gather this up and go stitch that line. Okay, so now I'm stitching that line right under number 9. I know, baby. Okay, Mommy can't see. I can't see right now. Go. Thank you. Okay, so I just stitched this line under number 9. Going to turn number 9 to the right. Going to trim off the excess. Oh, this is coming together nice. I'm liking it. I had done one earlier, and I had an error in it, and it was like, it was a bad error. So let me tell you something, guys. You think that you have it, and you know, I wasn't thinking all the way through, and so anyway, I missed something. And in the first one that I had done, I had a little heart over here. Oh my goodness, I'm so upset that I had to like, I couldn't use that one anymore. It was too much. I couldn't just rip it out because it was like a whole bunch of layers on top, so I just started over. But what okay, so let's move on. I have just added my 2 background pieces, so now I am at number 10 and 11, and we have added this fabric and this fabric already, and now we are at this orange one. And let's see. So I'm going to be adding two. I just did number 9, so I'm going to do 10 and 11. I'm going to take my next piece of fabric, I'm going to hold it pretty side toward me and then slide it underneath. You see that I'm holding the top 2 corners in my fingers, like between my fingers like this. And so when I'm not using the light box, so like if you don't have one, then I just seriously, I know where I'm going to be putting the stitch. So I just eyeball it from the back and I can see that it's higher than where I'm going to be stitching. So I know I'm stitching here and I know that my fingers were just up here. So there's plenty. I had like a really large piece that I've been working with, as you guys know. And so what I'm doing next is sewing down this little seam right here underneath number 10. Okay, again, I'm sewing this line right under number 10. Okay, I just sewed this line under number 10. I'm gonna turn number 10 to the right, fold the paper down right where I sewed, and trim the excess. And I'll fold that back to press. Now I am going to take this piece of fabric, hold it pretty side to me, and I'm going over number 11. And I can see where I'm going to sew. I just want to hold, nope, gotta go a little higher. And same on this side, needs to go a little bit higher. Okay. So this is where I'm sewing, and you can see that my fabric is definitely an 1/8 of an inch over that line. It's actually a 1/4, so it should be fine. So I'm just gonna go and stitch this line right under number 11. Okay, again, stitching this line right under number 11. Okay, I just stitched this line under number 11. I'm going to turn this so 11 is to the right or to the left if you are left-handed, whichever way you trim. Ooh, look how pretty that's getting. Okay, so now we've had 2 prints, and that means that we are going to now have 2 background pieces. And we are going to start having to cut them just a little bit longer because obviously they're going to start getting bigger exponentially as we sew outward. Okay, oops, hello, piece of the cat with it. And I'm just going to cut them a little bit longer. I didn't like measure, but you could like look at it and see, but I'm sure that's long enough. Okay, so now that we have those guys, I just did number 11, so now we're going to be doing 12 and 13. And I'm going to take my fabric and put it to the back. And I'm going to be sewing that line right under number 12. And so that's perfectly fine. My fabric is right here and over here somewhere, you can't see it. But it is definitely over this line by at least 1/8 of an inch for sure. So let's go sew that line right under number 12. Okay, so we just sewed this line under number 12. I will turn number 12 to the right, fold down on that seam, and trim. Okay, so I think you guys can see where we're going here, and I'm not gonna, we have, what, 51 that well, actually not 51, because I'm gonna stop here. So we have 39 that we're gonna have to do, and I'm not gonna go through all 39 with you guys because that would be very tedious. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go a few more rounds, and then I'll come back and we will definitely work toward finishing up together, okay? Okay, guys, so I have gone all the way around, and we have 2 more rows to add on. So I thought I would stop here and pick it up with you guys. So, where am I now? Okay, so this was the last one that I just sewed on, this gray one down here. And so my next color will be, those, that'll be good. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to do, we have our light box, and we are, let me see, that was number 33 that I just did. So now we're coming over here to number 34. I'm gonna hold the fabric pretty side to me. And I just want to make sure that I am at least 1/4 inch above the seam that we are going to sew under number 34, which is right here. And we are definitely past that. Okay, so now I'm just going to go over to the sewing machine, and I'm sewing this line right under number 34. Okay, so like I said, we are going to sew this line that is right under number 34. And again, I am going to lower my needle manually with my, I don't even know what we call this thing, the manual needle dropper. And when I see that the point is going right down exactly where I want it to go, then I can just manually do everything, or, you know, however you normally continue to sew. So I'm going to do 1 stitch, 1 back stitch, and then I'm going to sew down. And go all the way to the end, do a back stitch, and we're done. Okay, so we just sewed this line here under 34. So we're going to take number 34 and turn it to the right because I'm right-handed and that's how I use my rotary cutter. I'm going to set my add an 1/8 ruler and trim everything else away. And then we're just going to press this over. I'm just loving these colors, guys. I'm like a rainbow holic. Okay, so now we're going to take the next one. We're going to hold the fabric right side to ourselves, pretty side to ourselves, and we're going to take it that way directly under, and we are now going to be sewing this line under number 35. Okay, let's see. And I can always just, at first, eyeball where it's going to go through the back. And then, as I know I'm going to be sewing right here, I just want to make sure that I have enough fabric going over the top of that, which will be at least 1/8 of an inch because we know that's our seam allowance. And now we are ready to sew. So I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine. Okay, so I just sewed this line under number 35, so I'm going to turn number 35 to the right, fold back the paper on the seam line that I just sewed, and trim. Then we're going to press this back. Okay, now we're going to need 2 gray pieces, and I could probably just cut that in half. And I will take the selvage off. Looks like it's about in the same spot. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. Okay, so now we have just sewed this one down, which is number 35, and we're going to turn that counterclockwise to number 36. And I just want to make sure this is at least 1/8 of an inch over the line that I am going to stitch. So we are going to stitch this line right here, and it's definitely going at least 1/8 of an inch over. See? So we are all set. Okay, we just stitched this seam allowance at under number 36. Turn number 36 to the right and fold that over. And trim. Okay, so that was number 36. We are going to attach the second light gray piece to number 37. And we're going to be stitching that line directly under number 37. So it's going to be this line right here. If we pull this back, you can see that we definitely have at least 1/8 of an inch beyond that, so we're all set. Okay, so I just stitched this line under number 37, so we'll turn this and flip our paper back on the seam line that we just sewed. And then we're trimming away the excess. Okay, now our next line is going to be under number 38 here, and if we can see that this line, which one is it that we're doing? This one, then that one. I guess that's our last round. Well, hello, Jellybean. Hi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep. Okay. So this is going to be our last round. And what you can tell is that the line that we are going to be stopping at, it's going to end up being a square. And right here, we just went to the number 37 with the gray. And so with the 38, we are going to go around, but if you see on number 39, we'll definitely want to stop it here before we get all the way down, because that will close up the square. Okay. I think that I miscounted when I first started, because I was gonna, when I counted, for some reason, I thought there were 10 colors to go out. And now even after doing 10, we're stopping like 1 in. So I don't know. I must have messed something up, but I'm just going to leave it that way because those are the amount of colors that I selected. So I'm just going to finish that up. So let me cut this last color. All right. Let's see. I'm just going to have it go to the end. I just want to make sure I have enough. Okay. So okay, this was the last one I did. So here's my number 38 that I'm going to add. I want to hold pretty side to me. And I'm going to make sure that I am high enough. Okay, so this is the line that I'm going to sew, or the seam. And it's definitely beyond. So I am okay and ready to sew. Okay, so that's the line I just stitched. I'm going to fold my paper down there and trim. What you think, Jellybean? Does it look good? Yeah, it's coming along good. Okay, so now we are going to stitch under number 39. This will be our last stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here, right where that point is, right? So I'm not going to go all the way to the end. I'm going to go from this point to this point, because that will then close up the square. Okay, so it's the only reason why we're doing that. And normally we would have been doing it up here if I'd counted the colors correctly. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Mine's going to be slightly smaller than the 4 inches. Okay, so I'm going to take the fabric pretty side to me. Okay. And I just want to make sure, again, that I'm going at least 1/8 of an inch over. So here's the line that I'm going to sew right under the 39. And if I pull this back, I can see I've got plenty of fabric there. So I'm ready to sew. Okay, guys, so this is the last row that we are sewing on this mini series log cabin. And under 39, I am actually going to start sewing at the end of the seam that we just sewed, and then I'm going to come over and I'm going to stop it at the first one instead of extending to the end, because we're just trying to close this square up. So that's what we're doing here. And I'm going to stop it a little bit early here, like I said. Okay, so that's the last line that I'm going to stitch is under number 39. So I'm going to turn it and trim off the excess. Okay, so that completes my log cabin, and I'm just going to leave it like this until I decide what I want to do with them. And guys, I would absolutely love to see all of your blocks. I want to see how everybody's came out. I also want to share with you, I did work on another one. And I did this one using Canning Day, and I'd love to know what you guys think about that. I think it's really pretty. I think it came out really nice. And on this one, I just sewed some extra fabric around because I'm also not sure what I'm going to do with this one either. So I just put like a little bit of extra fabric around, and I'll figure out what I'm going to do with it. But there you go. I have a couple of samples so you can see how they can turn out depending on the fabric you use. And, you know, there's really sky's the limit. Whatever your favorite colors are, make one with those colors, and I think you'll be very happy. And please make sure that you hashtag, hashtag Alison Glass, hashtag Giucy Giuce, and hashtag mini-series SAL, so that we all can see everything that you're doing. And until next week, have fun sewing.